Okay, well, welcome back. I optimistically last time said that I was going to stick the flight controller on and get going. I've done a lot more crimping and wiring and so on since then because I wasn't quite ready. So if we just flip over to the copter, just have a quick look at what I've done. Okay, so you can see that I've got I've added a good old CRSF radio module here, which I've pinched off something else. I've got this nice Wi-Fi receiver underneath, which I mentioned last time. I'm going to stick that on. I've wired up the camera, and also one of the other things I realized was that the video receiver is inside, and when these come, they're the TBS ones are configured for SmartAudio, but a lot of mine are set up for CRSF, and if this was set to CRSF, then getting it onto SmartAudio was going to be a bit of a pain in disassembling it. So what I did was I powered it up, had a look inside, and you can see that the lights flashing. There's an orange and a blue one, and the protocol type is, I think, 6 orange flashes followed by a number of blue flashes, and 3 blue flashes is SmartAudio, 2 blue flashes is CRSF. Fortunately, mine was set to SmartAudio, so I'm not going to have to change that. But if I want to, say, update the firmware in the future, then I might have a little bit of a challenge because I can't even get there. I can just about press the button, but I can't get the USB stick on there. So anyway, this video transmitter is set up for SmartAudio. I wired up the camera, and what I'm going to do now is sort of the fastest configuration in history, hopefully. So one of the things I'm going to do is, you see I put the GPS on as well. I'm going to, this is quite a big copter, but I'm going to try and approach this as if this was a really large copter. So there's certain things you can't do, like waving it around, for instance. One of the things, so I'm going to, when I approach the tuning, I'm going to sort of take a similar approach. When I tune my small copters, there's a lot of shortcuts you can take for the tuning. More tricky on these bigger copters, and obviously more expensive if you get it wrong. So I'm going to try and take a sort of more conservative approach to the setup here. But in the meantime, I do have everything wired up, all the wiring that I want for now in order to get the copter in the air. So the thing that remains to do is configure it. And the first thing you need to do, obviously, is make sure that the accels and gyros are calibrated. And this is much easier to do while the flight controller is not fixed, especially with these sort of boxy flight controllers, while the flight controller is not fixed in the fuselage. So one of the things I try and do is calibrate all of my flight controllers as soon as I get them, so that at least I know they're calibrated, and then if I have trouble calibrating later on because they're in an awkward place, then at least I've got a calibration on there. So I haven't done this for this one. So what I'm going to do is unpack everything, or take everything off. So take off the power, take off all rather tight. And you probably don't want to watch me doing this, so I should pause. Alright, so that's fully disconnected, so I'm going to switch back to the other view now and connect via Mission Planner. And do a quick calibration setup. My desk is very flat. I don't really trust the copter, but my desk is very flat, so I'm going to use my desk there. Calibrate accels, level. It is level. On its left, easy enough because of the arrow. Right. Goes down. So, back. Done. All right. And then usually these things want a reboot. So what I'll do is I'll disconnect and then connect all the wiring up again. So back here. Okay, so I've wired up all the motors just as I showed you before, and I'm going to wire up the serial ports on the other end. Now I just want to sort of show you a quick trick, because the NORA is one of these, like a lot of these sort of higher end flight controllers, the UART numbering doesn't correspond to the serial numbering. So we've got here, you can't really see it here, but it says telemetry 1, telemetry 2, UART 4, U7, and then U3 I think here. Now it's nice that they've labelled these UARTs rather than telemetry, because telemetry 1 and 2 are pretty much always serial 1 and 2. That's the way these things are set up, regardless of the UART number. But the others can be a bit random. So what I'm going to do is plug in. So I'm going to plug in the RC receiver to telemetry 1. I think that is. Get which one they're wired up. I think it's this one. That's the RC receiver. Telemetry 1. That way around. Yeah. It's all a bit fine now. That's telemetry 1. And then I'm going to wire up this little wireless thing to telemetry 2. And then the one that's labelled telemetry 4, I'm going to wire up the camera, which is this one. And then the one that's labelled U7, I'm going to wire up the video transmitter. And then plug CAN back in, which is the current sensor, and then GPS at the bottom here. Sort of goes upside down. He says hopefully. Sure it goes upside down there. There we go. There we go. Locked in there. Okay. So, and I'll do it. Oh, and then the ESC telemetry is on this UART3 thing. So all nice and neat. I'll put this back in. Now that the GPS is plugged in, I get some nice lights on the GPS, which is fun, and some noise. And I quite like the CUAV GPS unit has got a full neopixel around the edge here, so it sort of gives you nice flashing lights there. So if I switch back to the other view, desktop, here we go, and connect. Well, actually, I'm not going to. I'll just disconnect that a second. What I'm going to do is use MAV proxy to start with. So if I connect MAV proxy and you can see I'm using COM74 as some windows in MAV in Mission Planner, and then in MAV proxy, which I'm using in WSL Windows Subsystem for Linux, I'm using TTYS74. So if I start MAV proxy, and if you don't use MAV proxy, I really recommend that you get to grips with it, because it's a super useful tool. So it sort of gives you direct access to some of the Mavlink commands that Mission Planner is using. Okay, and you can get parameters and all the rest of it. But one of the useful commands is there's these @sys. There's this sort of FTP @sys subsystem. So I can
in fact I can do FTP get at sys, and it'll, sorry, not FTP get, FTP list at sys, and it shows me everything in the @sys file system. So you can see a bunch of useful stuff there. This is all internal flight controller information, and you can sort of peruse at your leisure. But the one I'm interested in is UARTs here. So, and I'm going to do FTP get @sys uarts.txt, and then I'm going to stick a minus on the end, which means print to the console rather than saving to a file. Now, if I do that, the nice thing about this is it shows me both the serial port ordering and the UART port ordering. So the UART ordering is what is used inside the hardware definition, and the serial ordering is what is used in the parameters. And these are not the same on some of these flight controllers for historical reasons. On a lot of the sort of mini board controllers they are the same, but a lot of these bigger controllers they're not the same. So what you can see here is that, remember I said telemetry 1 and telemetry 2 are usually serial 1 and serial 2, so you can see that those are not actually UART 1 and UART 2, they're actually UART 2 and UART 6. But we don't need to know that. We don't need to know about UART 2 and UART 6, because all we need to know is the one we're connected to. So you know about UART 1 and serial 1 and serial 2. But what we do need to know about is UART 4. So remember, one of the ones was labeled UART 4, and you can see that's actually serial 4, which is useful. And then also UART 7, which turns out to be serial 6. And then finally, here's the UART 3 was the side port, which I've used for ESC telemetry, which is serial 7. So this is quite a handy way of being able, if your flight controller has UART numbering on it, how to map from UART numbering to serial port numbering. Obviously, if it's labeled some other way, then that's more tricky, but often things are labeled as UART rather than serial ports. So if I exit from that, I'll just scroll back just so we can see that, and then connect in Mission Planner. So the first thing I plugged in was the radio receiver, and that was on telemetry 1, which is serial 1. So serial 1, here we go, serial 1 sets protocol 2, which is Mavlink, and I actually want this to be CRSF, so I'm setting this to 23, and that should be the only change I need to make. For the radio receiver, you don't need to set board because that is selected automatically. You shouldn't need to set options either, because the way that the radio signal detection is done involves cycling through the different protocol options. So the only thing you should need to do is set serial 1 to protocol 23. So there we go, protocol 23. So then on serial 2, I plugged in the little Mavlink thing, the Wi-Fi connection, and that's already set to Mavlink, so that should be sufficient. Shouldn't need to change that. Then the next one was labeled UART 4, which if we look here is actually serial 4. So serial 4, and the thing I plugged in there was the RunCam. So I am going to set the protocol to 26, which is the RunCam protocol. And again, that should be the only thing I need to set there. And then the last one was labeled UART 7, which from here we can see is serial 6. So I need to set serial 6. And this was SmartAudio. So again, SmartAudio is protocol 37. And the only other change I'm going to set this to half duplex. It should be, so SmartAudio is a one-wire protocol, and to get it right you need the SmartAudio pin of your VTX connected to the transmitter pin of your UART, which I've done here, and then I think you have to specify that it's half works, but I think that's the only thing you have to do. Again, you don't have to set the baud rate. That should be set automatically for you by the protocol driver. So I know a lot of people struggle with CRSF setup and SmartAudio setup, so the AP side of things should be very, very simple. So I'm going to write those parameters, and then what I'm going to do is disconnect and power up from the battery so that I get power to the VTX properly. So disconnect that, power up the battery with a nice big pop. There we go. Now we can see everything's flashing. We've got the legs flashing and the flight controller flashing and the compass GPS flashing. And if we go to messages, what we should see here if I connect, helps if I connect. Okay, so I've connected. I've probably missed the output a little bit there because I took too long about it. Here we go. Okay. So, okay, so first thing is throttle below filter. That's because my transmitter isn't on. So I'm going to turn on my transmitter. And I've got the CRSF micro plug-in here. And that should bind. I might have to repower. There we go. That's bound. Okay, so now we have CRSF. It's detected CRSF. It's configured itself to CRSF v3 because I've got the latest version of the firmware, which is great. And that appears to be working. Now, again, I think I missed the messages for the other things because it took too long. So I'll try this once more. Disconnect. And well, I can just reboot it from here, can't I? Let's try that. Sometimes a software reboot, the RX doesn't reinitialize properly. Okay, if we go to the messages. Okay, so the first thing to notice is the camera was detected. You see there's this RunCam initialized, and it's got features 08, which means it's a 5-key OSD, which is correct. That is that kind of camera. And then the next thing you can see is VTX R. Now, I lied a little bit. There's one other setting that you need for that to appear, and that is VTX enable, which I'd already set. So VTX enable was set to 1 here. And all of the other VTX parameters were 0. But now, because SmartAudio has worked correctly, when I look at the VTX parameters, I can now see that it's read those off of the video transmitter. And this is why I get the video message, wherever it was, I missed it, but there was a video message here, VTX here. So this you get this video message when it's sort of initialized correctly. So SmartAudio is working, RunCam is working, CRSF is working, and the final thing to check was the Wi-Fi modules. So if I unplug this, from USB, so it's on power. And instead, I should be able to go to UDP. So I'm actually, you can't see this, but on the module it tells you the Wi-Fi network and the Wi-Fi code. So I've connected my Wi-Fi to that network, and if you do that, then I think a feeling last time it connected automatically. Maybe, hang on, maybe I have to reconnect the Wi-Fi. Let's have a look. Okay, yeah, I need to reconnect the Wi-Fi. So connect to the Wi-Fi. Just thinking about it. Still thinking about it. I think one of the problems is that obviously there's no internet on the end of this Wi-Fi network, so Windows takes a while to figure out that there's no internet on the end of this thing. So it's now connected, and now sometimes this connects automatically. Let's see. Maybe not. Try connecting over. Oops. Connecting over UDP. There we go, connected over UDP. And as you can see, all of the parameters come back. No USB involved. Here's my magic trick. No USB involved. Connected over that Wi-Fi module, and I didn't have to set up anything at all. I just plugged it in and it worked correctly. I've no idea whether so if we go back to serial 2, you can see that the baud rate is 57K by default. I have no idea whether it's possible to increase that, whether it copes. Certainly Wi-Fi should cope with that baud rate, and the UART should cope with that baud rate, but it just depends on what the module does. So I'm not going to mess with that for now, but I might, if I'm at the field, having a faster baud rate is probably quite useful. So I'll see. Certainly with Bluetooth modules I've had, if the Bluetooth module baud rate and the serial baud rate do not match, then they don't connect. So I don't kind of want to mess around with this, but this does appear to be working at the moment, which is great. All right, so everything is working, and I'll stick the flight controller down. I've calibrated it. The only thing I haven't calibrated is the compass, and I'm going to leave that for now and assume this is such a big copter that I can't calibrate the compass, and see whether we can get it off the ground without calibrating the compass. Yeah, I think the next thing to do is put some props on. I was just going to show you one more thing. Let's see if it shows up here. So if I get my transmitter. So might be easier under this. I wonder whether this one works. Let's see whether can sort of work. Okay, so if I go to the that's a bit too dark, isn't it? Can't really see. What I'm trying to show is that with the VTX connected over, sorry, not the VTX, with the RX connected, I can use the Crossfire configure Lua script. And this is what I did when I set this up originally. So I went to TX is set up correctly for me. So a few things I've done. So Mavlink is off for me. Again, you can't really see that, but I've got Mavlink set to off in the TX setup. And then in the RX setup, the changes I had to make, so
think it defaults to 8 channel by default, so I changed it to 12 channel, which I want. Obviously want telemetry on. I've turned off RC by Mavlink because I'm using CRSF, and battery sensor, I probably do want that on. Switch on the battery sensor. And then the other thing is the output map, and on the way I've got this set up, I've got CRSF, TX and RX configured on output 3 and 4, and so that's the main change you have to make, is set up CRSF, TX and RX. I think by default it detected it as S-Bus, and I was puzzled why it wasn't connecting, but yeah, it's just this is fairly easy to set up the RX correctly once you have it connected and bound to the transmitter. So that's something else I have to do. All right, so I will calibrate this quickly, just so it's done. Oops, let's connect here. So, radio calibration. Doesn't think it's connected. Interesting. That's possible because the soft reboot I did. So I suspect, let's turn this off. Reboot. So I'm going to reboot from the power. I go by USB, it's a bit quicker.
Telemetry lost. Telemetry recovered.
There we go. Okay, yeah. So it was because of the soft reboot I did. Radio is now recognized, and I can calibrate the radio for this. For all these switches. And then 12, I think that's all 12 channel. So that 10 I didn't do. Where is 10? There's 10. Brilliant. So that's all of them up to channel 12. Very good. In actual fact, I believe it's brought 16 channels CRSF-V3, but I haven't quite got around to trying that out. Might require an update to the Lua script. Okay, so that's all calibrated. Very nice. Good. Done. And then the other thing I have to watch for is pitch being backwards. I have to figure that out when I get close to the time, but pitch ends up being backwards a lot of the time on these for these transmitters. All right, good. So I shall put some props on, glue down the transmitter, and get to first flight. Thanks for watching.